Hey all, and welcome to the Skeptic Hangout, the place where we sit back, relax, and discuss some of humanity's most controversial and intriguing concepts through the lens of skepticism. We have with us today Richard Gilliver from the Skeptic Takeout, Laura McGee from Unapologetically Me, and Richard Gill from the Yorkshire Atheist. Today, we're going to be discussing social media. So grab your English tea or your strawberry iced tea, get comfy, and join us as we unpack where we all go to get all of our information and to formulate all of our opinions. So, gentlemen, how are we all doing today?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a good week.
Hunky dory.
Hunky dory. Awesome to hear. Okay, so when I saw the subject social media, I was all at once excited and dismayed because I was like, I don't know what to talk about at all, and hence the dismay. And also, like, it's kind of exciting because I think that there is a lot of potential there for skepticism when you talk about social media. So even though I am completely void of where to start or what kind of topics to talk about, I think there's some potential, and I'm hoping you guys can kind of draw some of it out. So who wants to go first?
Well, when I was thinking about this episode, my first instinct, and I'm sure most people, well, maybe not most, but a lot of people have this instinct as well to say, oh, social media is a bad thing. But then I started thinking about it in a more broad terms and how it's impacted me personally. And you know what? I've done really fucking well out of it. It's been brilliant for me. It's been absolutely brilliant. The exposure that I've got from it and the interaction and the friends. And It's been really, really good for me. And I was one of these people who at one point would literally say, I will not add anyone to my social media account if I've not met them in real life. And I'm still very strict with who I add to my social media accounts.
Yep.
And I don't have many friends on there. Some people are in the thousands. I've got maybe 130 people. I don't add people. If someone sends me a friend request, I won't just add someone to social media just because they've sent me a friend request. I need to have interacted with them in some way before I will do that. But I've met some really good friends. I've got friends who I've met through social media who are in the States, you, Laura, and in Australia, and in Sweden, and in Germany.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
In Yorkshire.
I know, I met 2 people from Yorkshire. I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah, you've really
on the entire internet.
Poor luck.
I drew 2 short straws.
That's some bad luck. But I mean, even joking aside, to say me and Richard are like probably no more than like 30 miles away from each other, the chances of me bumping into him and forming a friendship with him without social media is like, it wouldn't have happened.
Wouldn't have happened. And I think as well, specifically thinking about, you were saying, Richard, about how people automatically think social media is bad, but you've come off well from it. I think like the pandemic that we're all still living through now, 18 months later, nearly, it feels like 18 years later. But like, had we not have had social media as a way to interact with people, where would we have been? Like, if I'd have had to stay inside my house and not have that method of sort of still having community and still having access to communication methods with my friends and family and stuff, like, it would have been a very different pandemic to live through.
I think you bring up a really good point, because I wouldn't even be here right now talking to you 2 gentlemen if it weren't for the social media thing. Not just because I wouldn't have run into you guys, because I am nowhere near Yorkshire, but because I only started my channel because I had finished up school. I had only recently, a couple months, maybe up to 6 months, but not even that much, prior to finishing up my schooling. I had gotten onto some of the secular and freethinker and atheist pages, and we're starting to meet people. And then I graduated and got all this time freed up. And COVID hit and I wasn't going out and doing stuff. So I turned to social media, and that's when I started my channel, and that's when I started interacting more in more of an activist capacity, whereas before it was kind of more of a exploration, like just looking into these groups and seeing what people do and what people say and what I have in common or not in common. Just kind of feeling out these communities. I dove in, right, and I started really meeting people. And so literally, if it weren't for this whole social media thing, I would have probably been bored and done something different, maybe turned to art or writing or hiking more often than I already do or something. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how it plays a unique role, not just in our lives, but in the COVID pandemic itself. Like it's really interesting how social
It's
media
funny
has.
you should say that as well, because although I'm from an entirely different background from you, and I've been involved with social media and activism uh, with and without social media. It was really, again, through the pandemic, I didn't start my channel until I'd seen. Okay, so we need to backtrack a little bit here for the listeners, because they're not all of everyone who's watching this or listening to this is going to know this. I started my channel. I was thinking about starting a channel about a year and a half ago now.
Mhm.
And I was volunteering for the ACA, and I was kind of asking advice from my friends in the ACA, and they were saying, yeah, go for it and do it. And I never had the confidence to do it. Although I'd been having the conversations with theists for many, many years, I didn't have the confidence to get in front of a camera and do it.
Right.
I was really nervous about it. And then I came, and I don't know what order it was in. To me, it just seems like it was the same time. I came across Richard, and I came across Laura.
It was
And
about the same time,
Yeah.
at
they'd
least
both
within a month of each
started-
other.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
both started their own little YouTube channels, and it gave me so much confidence. And this is a compliment. I will.
Well, if
I
these
will,
losers can do it,
yeah. I will. I want to preempt this by saying this is a compliment, because it may not sound like one. They were both saying they were both raw. They were both doing it with really bad equipment and not really much of a setup. They were just coming out and saying what they wanted to say. There was no kind of script behind it. And I was watching them and I thought, if these can do it, if they're doing it the way they're doing it, I'm sure I can do it. I don't have any experience. I've got no equipment. I'm sure I can do it. So I reached out to both of them individually. And I put to Richard that we kind of get together and do a show called Skeptic. No, it wasn't Skeptic. It was Atheist Takeout. Where we get together and we order a takeaway and we sit having a round table discussion, literally.
Wait,
while we're eating.
Wait. So hold on a second. I have to interrupt. Why are we doing this show here and we're not sitting around and eating freaking takeout? Like, I never heard that. I know you and I had a different discussion. I remember when you first contacted me in our very first conversations, which is awesome, by the way. I'm glad that we've ended up where we're at now. But never was food involved in any of these. And I am a freaking foodie. I would love it.
When this COVID thing's finally over, we're going to have to do a get together live show where we are sitting around eating and actually doing the show. But
and I'll do the whole AMSR thing or ASMR thing where I'm like, I'll do it right in the microphone for you guys. I'll give you guys all of that stimulation that you want.
It's only one or the other, talk or eat. So I mean, it would be just an hour show of me just eating. I mean, that would be.
Can we just hire other people to talk and we can do the eating? Okay, so now that we've had an on-air business meeting about where we're going with the show, let's take it back around to social media. What's great is this show is specifically connected to the whole social media conversation. So I think it's kind of a natural.
And it isn't, and that's where I was going with that. I'd had this conversation about Richard, and then the second pandemic hit in the UK. We'd already had one. We'd already had a lockdown. The second lockdown came along, and you know, that scuppered the plans for that. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to dive in and do it. And it was that second pandemic which really pushed me to somewhere where I wasn't comfortable going before. And if you watch the first episode back of Skeptic Takeout, it's awful. I'm looking over here and I'm like, I'm using a really bad microphone like this. it's
hard to get
terrible.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there's a message out there to anybody listening who's even thinking about doing a channel or getting involved or being on screen or anything, is that the best way to start is to start. Right.
Definitely.
Just do it. I mean, obviously, if you're one of those,
don't do what I did and procrastinate for a year thinking about it. That's the worst thing you can do. Just dive straight in.
Yeah. And obviously any sort of like pre-research or setting up your show, there are some people who are shit hot at like marketing or setting up all the background of it and building like a foundation. If you're good at that, great, do it. Like I recommend that, because trying to catch up like this one right here and learn it all as she goes, it can be a little bit more complicated, more difficult. However, I think the whole like extending the conversation from social media to include things like YouTube and these channels and these pursuits, it doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be fancy and high tech. It could just be your voice on a cell phone, right? And then you just upload it to YouTube or to a podcast and just go. So,
and I think that's one of the things about social media, and we've touched on both of these elements, is the fact that social media can be a platform for your voice, but it can also be a space for a conversation. It can be a space for a community, can't it? So, you know, we obviously talk all the time about our Facebook discussion group as being sort of one of those spaces where people can come together, talk about things. It's a safe space. We're very open to different opinions, and you know, there's that conversation, debates, and things like that. But also sometimes it is just, I want my opinion to be seen by people, and I'm wanting to tell people this, and in a way, like us with our own YouTube channels and things, and there is a lot of crossover between like YouTube and social media and stuff, and is YouTube social media or whatever. But like, I think there is that element of just like having a voice being a really important thing, and a really easy way to do it is on social media, because they're all basically free platforms that you can go on and use. Obviously different platforms work in different ways, and you know, like Instagram is image focused, Twitter is text focused, Facebook is you know, photo
people
text
focused. Yeah.
it's sort of, but like, I think there's not a one size fits all, and people have different needs and priorities and wants and things. And that's what I think is brilliant. One brilliant aspect of social media as it stands nowadays is the fact that it's a really diverse sort of area to meet the needs of a diverse human race.
So that brings up, okay, I love what you said, like all of that. I think it was really good. But then it
Thanks.
just brought it, no, yeah, but then it brought up like something that I was planning on doing at the beginning of the show and didn't do, which was kind of going back and discussing what actually is social media. So you kind of touched on it. You're like, well, Twitter is this, and then there's that, and now there's TikTok that people have just recently exposed me to, and it's like, holy shit, there's this whole other thing, and I'm not exactly positive about it yet. But what, in your opinion, I'm not even looking for like a textbook definition, but from your guys' perspective, what is social media?
I think people used to talk about social networks a lot more than social media, didn't they? And I think it's interesting that nowadays we always do talk about social media rather than social networks as much.
Okay,
Like,
so media is things like video, audio, pictures, things like that. So it kind of makes sense in that respect. Getting away from the whole network term, which is really just, maybe it could be like a list of phone numbers, right? Or
Very
a contact list. Yeah. Getting more
is
into
social network like a is it like a sociology or it's like a sociological idea, isn't it? In terms of like, you could describe the network of people that you are actually friends with in real life, like as a social network. And I think it was that sort of terminology which was grafted onto the technology of all of it, potentially.
yeah.
That's in my head somewhere.
So the network aspect is the connections that you make with people and the friends that you have. So your social network could be like, say, the people that you have on, I don't know what, Facebook, Twitter, what's the other one, Snapchat, what's the one that's like really super popular that I don't ever
Twitter.
use?
I don't know.
I don't know. So I think there's a fourth one that I'm forgetting. I should get my teens in on this episode. Oh my gosh, they'd blow us all away. Like this should actually be the guest show. It should be like this show should be teenagers.
Anybody under 15 is welcome.
Yeah, right. Or like say maybe like 13 to 18 is like our sweet zone for understanding all this shit. Right. And by the way, Facebook is for old people in case you guys didn't know. Okay, so social network is the connections that you make. Social media to me is more of the entire conglomeration, like the videos, the pictures, music, being able to create content. Because media in the art world is what you use to produce your art or your thing. So media could be like molding or sculpting clay. It could be oil painting. It could be what kind of canvas. It could be whether it's digital or not digital. So social media to me is sort of where you put all those elements together, and sort of add them into the social network where it becomes, to me, it becomes a bigger conglomeration of things. But it's so Jilliver, in your opinion, because I know that Gil and I have talked a lot, but where would you draw the line between social media, quote unquote, and like other things on the internet? Like what makes it social media versus just a website or versus actual media like the news?
I think I don't know. It's just because the answer I was just going to give, it doesn't really apply to YouTube. But in general, I would say social media is in the very black and white way is something where you can connect with the community, and you can do that with YouTube. But you can also do that with your own private website, putting videos out there. I think the difference between that and YouTube is certainly in my experience, and YouTube is vital in a lot of ways to me finding this community. Because I was doing this shit for years on my own, and then I came across a video of Matt Dillahunter.
Oh, nice.
Which got me into like the whole volunteering for the ACA thing.
Yeah.
The ACA, by the way, for any of our, we tend to talk about it quite often on this show and take it for granted that people know what we're talking about. It's the Atheist Community of Austin. And it's a voluntary organization that goes out and does kind of social work for separation of church and state. I'm a volunteer for that. I know Laura's a volunteer for that. I know Richard's done a little bit of work for that, haven't you, in the past? He does the important stuff. Me and Laura just kind of the crap stuff. Yeah, but yeah, it's and it was through YouTube that I got into all that. So I feel I don't want to say that YouTube isn't part of social media, because that's the gateway.
You don't say it. No, just don't say it.
That's the gateway that got me into this whole fantastic community of volunteering, having friends in many different countries. I mean, and on that subject, one of the friends I met, Kristen, who doesn't like being called out, so we're not going to go much further. She's literally today phoned me up and given me a tutorial on Discord, which is another social media platform, because I have no idea what I'm doing. When I first come across social media platforms, I'm like lost in the dark. So, so I've had a phone call today talking me through how to use yet another social media platform, which to me is an up and coming one, but I suppose it's been around for years. I'm not really sure.
Well, so it started as just a chat program for like gamers and stuff that you could chat while you were in game. So yeah, I think it's always had that aspect of social networking, like what Gil was saying earlier. Yeah. And it is sort of starting to take on that sort of social media aspect, because you can do things like push videos and share your screen and stuff like that. I don't know that it captures information and saves it, other than in like the general chat, like you can have chat conversations. I don't really know how it works in terms of sharing.
That's an example of something that's like specifically built for communities, that like people join a group or a community on Discord, as opposed to like Twitter, where you just sort of in the open with, like obviously you can have private things, but I think some of them are built specifically for groups and communities. and some things are more specifically
Open space.
Yeah, just open public spaces.
So
Yeah.
on the note of Discord, seeing as it's newly discovered to me, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you both, what was the first social media platform you went on?
Dear Lord. Okay, so let's
how
cut
is
to
that
break.
gone?
And how what?
We'll see you all soon.
Okay.
Okay, so what have we got coming up? Well, it's a bit of a quiet week for us. I'm sure if you look at Laura will be on the non-profits at some point because she usually is. But also, I wanted to take a moment to, if you're familiar with the ACA and Talk Heathen, the show they did, two former hosts of that have started the new venture outside of the ACA. I just want to give a quick shout out of that to them. Give a shout out to Vila Bianca and Eric Murphy, who've started a new show called Skeptic Generation. That's going to air at 11:30 a.m. Central Time on a Sunday. So if you can catch that, please do. I'm sure I speak for all of us here when we cannot wait to see where they're going to take that new show. It's really excited about that.
In the past, aren't we? We're recording in the past, so for us, it's definitely not happened yet. So it's very exciting.
It's coming up for us. I think that by the time this airs, they're going to have done the first episode. So
one way or another, check YouTube, check Facebook, either get connected for the up and coming show or go check out their
Skeptic Generation. They're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and they're on YouTube.
So for anybody listening who's not familiar with Eric and V, they're really, really great on-air personalities in terms of their presence in front of the camera. But the other thing is that they're very knowledgeable, and they tend to be very good at, similar to us, where we're like, I don't know, or when we make a mistake, we'll make a correction. They are right up my alley in that respect. Like they'll be the first ones to say, like, hey, I'm not sure, I'm not going to go there, or I'm not going to have that specific conversation because I'm not the expert. But they're also good at being able to say, hey, last week on the show, I made a mistake and here's my correction. Or they'll issue a midweek correction on their channels. So very humble people. Very good at talking about what they are comfortable talking about. Very, very knowledgeable there.
Gil?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, they're both also incredibly, like, kind, patient interlocutors. Like, the way that they have discussions with people, some of whom certainly do not have the same level of patience and what have you. It's they're a really good role model in that regard as well. So
so now we've just given them like a
3 out of 3. Oh, free.
A free 3-minute advert for their new show. Let's talk about our Facebook group. Richard, Gill, take it away.
Yes. This is the bit of the show where I think of another way of explaining the fact that you should go to our Facebook group, join, comment on things, because that's a good idea. No, do that. The official Facebook discussion group is a brilliant place for us all to have conversations and to continue the conversation that we're having here today. Obviously today about social media, and with it being on a social media platform such as Facebook.
So go do it.
Yeah, perfect way of living out the experience of the conversation. As well, I don't know how you're currently consuming this episode, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or Stitcher or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any of those sorts of places. But whichever one you're on, you can go on any of the others, and all of those links are on our Linktree page in the description, Linktree/Skeptic Hangout. So check that out as well.
Okay, so welcome back, gentlemen, from the commercial break. I hope you both enjoyed it.
Oh, it was wonderful.
Yeah, hope you went and had some tea and some crackers and crumpets and whatever else you guys, tea and cookies. And now we're back at it. So let's get back at it. Gilliver had a question for us before the break.
I did. So I want to know, what was the first social media platform you were active on? and how social media has changed for you over from then to now.
I think for me, and I can't remember which one it would have been, but it's a toss-up between MySpace and Bebo. So obviously, I know we've spoken about how I'm a child of the 90s, so I was born in 91. And so we had
Youngling.
yeah, a mere Padawan. But yeah, we had internet when we were growing up, and well, from about being sort of 8 or 9, I think, dial-up internet. And so yeah, I think Bebo was a popular one amongst people my age in the UK. I don't know if it was an international thing or if it was just a UK thing. But I know MySpace was obviously much more widespread and popular. And it's still going, I think, as like a music thing, but it's certainly not somewhere I sort of exist nowadays. But yeah, that's definitely still a thing for some people, apparently.
I need to go search it up and just check it out, just for
Yeah.
like nostalgic reasons or something.
Yeah, and I think the sort of the main ways that I used it then would have just been essentially sort of meaningless things, or trying to impress people, or trying to give a good impression of myself, as opposed to like using it for what I'd sort of use it for nowadays, which is like sharing things about my life with people that I care about in one space, or sharing things that I care about in terms of like, you know, this atheist activism stuff that we do in other spaces. So I guess the purpose as to why I use social media has changed a lot, and the platforms that are available now are much more varied, like we've said, in order to do those things in specific places and stuff. So yeah, I have no more to say.
Yeah, so I definitely started out on MySpace. I don't know what that other platform is. I've never heard of it, but yeah, I started on MySpace, and I can still remember like it kind of felt a little bit cartoony and fun. Like you could change your backgrounds and make them look like whatever you wanted. I remember I could set music to play, so I actually remember some of the songs that I had set to play when people popped up on my page, or going to friends' pages and what songs they had. Um, so yeah, like I remember being really into it. I remember when I first switched over to Facebook, I was like, this is way more boring than MySpace. I don't
Yeah.
understand why people like it more. But I mean, in hindsight, I think it was more user friendly and kind of was a little bit better at connecting people. But I got off MySpace. I can't remember why. For years, and I didn't have any social media. I only got on Facebook because people were like family members were like, "Hey, when are you gonna share pictures of the kids?" Or "Hey, when do I get pictures of the kids?" And so instead of like individual family members like sending them either like prints of the kids or I don't know, emailing them pictures or whatever, I was like, get on Facebook, I'll post pictures, I'll keep in touch with everybody. And if you don't have a Facebook account, then too bad. I'm not obligated to send you pictures of my children, right? If you want to see them and you're interested, get a Facebook account and you can track me there, right? So
And I
for
think it's
me,
nowadays, like sometimes, like I'll become friends with someone and I'll be like, "Oh, do you have Facebook?" And they're like, "No," and that seems odd to me. You know, like I can't connect with you online in that place. Like, and it's interesting how I find that odd, because it's kind of by default we assume everyone has these things, but not
yeah, I
everyone
actually
does.
have a friend who doesn't have any social media, and he and I just like because we met through the military, he's on a different base. And we just occasionally call each other and chat and catch up that way. And it's one of those like, back in the day when you call a friend who you haven't talked to, and you're like, so the last 6 months, what's been going on? Right. And so we do these like long sort of catch up chats every few months. Um, but yeah, I he's also the kind of guy that doesn't let his kids watch any TV whatsoever during the school week, but they can watch a little bit on Fridays and Saturdays. Whereas with me, it's like, all right, it's 3 in the afternoon and you finished all your schoolwork and all your chores. So whatever, like go play
Get
your
out of
video
my
game.
hair.
Yeah, no, well, any sort of that. But I mean, it's like, yeah, if you want your screen time, take it as long as I regulate and make sure you're not getting too much of it, right? So that whole paradigm of, oh no, my kids have no screens at all during the school week, that blows my mind. But you're right, like that is a rarity, and we have a very unique, more deliberate relationship, and also more off and on because we rarely get to have those conversations. So
Yeah.
because he's not on social media, like it changes the dynamic of our friendship, right?
And
So
actually, I
yeah, it's really
think
interesting.
sometimes having connections with people on social media uh, is sort of like not a barrier because it can open things, but like you wouldn't have those in-depth good quality communications with that person, probably if you were just Facebook friends, because
Right.
you sort of by default connected to him, so that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Like who knows how often we'd actually talk. We might like each other's stuff or like comment on each other's posts. But yeah, you're right. Like we wouldn't have those like long, like hour or two conversations of catching up and hey, how has life been? And what have you been up to? I mean, at the same time, we would know those things, sort of.
Yeah.
At least if that's the kind of stuff that we'd post. But yeah, you're right. Like it makes to me it makes that specific friendship unique and special and good because it's a deliberate friendship. It's like, oh, I haven't talked to this person in a while. I need to call them and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool.
What about you, Gilliver, answering your own question about back in time?
Talking about back in time, you've just given me a flashback of an old Motley Crue home video where the bassist was asked a question and he says, that's a Barbara Walters question. I'm old. Ignore it. It's several years before you were born. Mine was MySpace. Mine was MySpace, and it was because I was in a band that was on MySpace, and it was an excellent resource for getting across to people. And the reason I stopped using MySpace is because there was this new thing that now it probably didn't happen like this. This is my failed memory, but to me it seemed like literally overnight that this happened. This new platform came along called Facebook, and MySpace suddenly, literally, just changed everything about the way it did things to try and copy Facebook. The whole format of MySpace changed entirely. And it was just like a carbon copy of Facebook. And I was like, fuck you then. And I just came off MySpace. I didn't join. I was averse to Facebook for a long, long time. It took me a long time to get on there. And even when I got on, I left again. And it took me a long time again to get back on there. It was such a good thing that I did because it's been so beneficial to me having got back onto Facebook. But as I said just before our commercial break, I'm now being introduced. So people have been trying to introduce me to I forgot the name of the platform. Come on, help me out.
What does it do? Is it like Twitch or is it like TikTok or
It was what? Sorry, Richard.
what?
Discord.
Oh yeah, Discord.
And people have been trying to get me on there for about 6 months now, and I'm just like, I'm so slow at picking things up like that it's just. But I'm finally getting into Discord. But yeah, it's started with MySpace. Currently at Discord, the new one. I don't do Instagram or anything like that. I'm on Twitter.
Oh, Instagram was the other one I couldn't remember. Yeah.
I'm on Twitter professionally, but not personally. So yeah.
One aspect of sort of social media that I wanted to talk about, and we've mentioned it, I think, in this episode and previous ones, is that whole thing about like echo chambers. And I think certainly with that sort of skeptical view of things, like I think it's because obviously the idea of an echo chamber, isn't it, that like because you're connected online with people who are similar to you in lots of ways or loosely similar in lots of ways, or because algorithms know the sorts of things that you like, that you have a perception that everyone agrees with you on this point and this point. And I think that can amplify people's, well, it does, because this is the whole idea of an echo chamber, like amplifies people's perceptions of the importance of their own ideas, and makes them view the world as everyone thinks this, which can then influence how they behave in the real world and consider real life questions. I just wanted to know what your two thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so you had said something earlier about how like social media was really good because it gives you like you get your voice out there, or you can be heard, or you have like a platform. And I think it is really, really good and positive in that respect, and equally bad and negative in that respect. Not just, I mean, so the echo chamber thing scares me because it really does make people dig their heels in a little bit more. but and what I mean is like, so if you have a belief that needs to be challenged or that deserves to be challenged, now you have this space where it can't be challenged, but because people are reinforcing your belief, it becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think that I mean, and I'm not just saying, when I say belief, I mean anybody, religious, non-religious, secular, political, like it kind of runs the whole gambit, like whether or not like roller skating or rollerblading is better, like I mean you get
Definitely
these.
rollerblading.
Yeah, I like
Rollerblading.
both. I don't care. Give me both. But what really concerns me, I guess, so instead of just answering your question about what do I think about echo chambers, I think they suck. I think it's a
Yeah.
necessary evil because there's a lot of positive and negative to social media, and so it's not enough to make it swing into negative. For me, what it is people's, and it kind of goes along the idea of the echo chamber, but a little bit different. People's perception that they can learn things from social media, right? That because they heard it on social media, that it's true. People get their news from social media, they get information. You build a meme, and that meme starts to carry power with people, versus just some stupid idea that some guy had and put it on a picture that was funny and appropriate that matched the whatever he has to say. And now suddenly it holds significance to
And going along with that idea,
hundreds of
there's the
people.
whole thing as well of people seeing the headline of a news article, not clicking on the news article and basing everything all their opinions on and I think it's easy to fall into that because you do see a sensationalist headline, but basing all their opinions about one topic based on the headline of a news article that they haven't read. And that's a similar
Right.
sort of thing as well, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, I think the thing is as well with social media is like YouTube particularly is it was instrumental pretty much for getting the resurgence of the flat earth movement out there. I know we've talked about this
Yeah.
before, but it was literally instrumental in that, to the point where they now put disclaimers on there with flat earth videos. But I was watching a video the other day, and this was a video that had and thousands and thousands and thousands of views from a guy who literally was speaking about the Sphinx in Egypt uh, being not a statue. And I swear I'm not making this up. Not a statue, but a petrified living thing. It was literally
Whoa.
talking about the
Whoa.
Sphinx once being alive and now
What?
being dead. And this is like, people have a voice to spread this kind of ideas. And this, we've been largely positive about social media before the break in the show, but it really
welcome to
can
the
do
negative
real
half.
harm. Sorry, Gil, go on.
Welcome to the negative half of the show.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna skeptic the shit out of social media, this is the time that we're gonna do it, right? So yeah, no, I think it's very frightening that ideas that in general would be very small, some guy would say it and like maybe get laughed at, or maybe a couple people would believe him or whatever, but it wouldn't really have a platform to spread just really bad ideas, right? Um, that is a really good example of one. Like, yes, the resurgence of the flat earth movement, it's jarring and shocking to a lot of us because a lot of us take for granted, like, oh, well, but it's been scientifically proven otherwise, right? But when you start to look into their arguments, yes, their arguments from an academic perspective are very easy to defeat, but they sound really legit. And when I first heard my first YouTube video on the flat earth theory, it put me in like a week long research phase because it wasn't like, yep, earth is flat, I'm convinced. It was more like, whoa, this is a sophisticated argument. And I'm really curious, and it piqued my interest. More from like a curiosity standpoint. And in fact, that's how I stumbled on Aaron Ra, was one of his debates with flat earther.
About things, like making you think, actually, I thought I knew this. Do I definitely actually know this? And
Yes.
yeah.
That's exactly what I did. I was like, wow, I have taken for granted that I think the earth is round my entire life. What if I'm actually wrong? Like, and I started trying to imagine a paradigm where the earth is actually flat, and it didn't really last very long or work very well. But yeah, it is um an elegant argument, and it has a lot of facts that I mean, I'm putting in air quotes for those that are not on video, but
what's the length of time it lasted? This, I wonder if the earth is flat. No.
No, it was more like, so while I was listening, so for me, if that's the question that you're asking to me, it was like, I I allowed myself the mental space to meditate on it a little bit. What would it feel like? What would it be like? Is it realistic? Can I buy off on it? So I allowed myself that moment of imagination where I tried to accept that paradigm as being true. And what it did is it just made me really interested in it. I was like, wow, gee whiz, now I just want to learn more. Um, and yeah, I kind of set off a like I said, about a week long binge of videos where I just couldn't get enough. Um, but what you were talking about with the Sphinx thing, like both of those ideas are just really bad science, and anyone who takes the time to understand can pick apart where those arguments go wrong. But really, the Sphinx as a petrified giant beast,
But see,
like,
this is with social media. That's turned from what would have been a conversation with three other blokes in the pub
right,
to suddenly being a big thing that people all over the world can hear about and think about, and
Yeah.
it blows it up, doesn't it?
it does, and it gives it way more credence and popularity and attention than it really deserves. And so that's where there's like sort of a catch 22 with this whole social media thing is, yeah, we get voices and we can sit here and do this because of social media, right? Like we can sit around and have a BS conversation. Now, the second that someone takes something that I or one of the Richards say and determines that that is the truth because we said it and runs with it and makes it popular or puts it in a meme or whatever, that's where it scares the shit out of me. It's like where you take everyday people with everyday opinions and you start to inflate the importance of what they're saying.
Okay, so on that note, and we're dismissing the kind of the guys in the pub random conversation about a giant lion human-headed things. Yeah. What about the most subtle? Because it's easy to dismiss that kind of stuff. What about the most subtle problems of social media, like influencing political campaigns and things like that?
Mhm. I thought you were going to say something, Gil, because you were like, I
I thought
was like, oh, wait for it. It's
took a
coming. No.
big breath.
No,
Yeah,
that.
there's been lots recently, though, hasn't there? I would say recently, sort of over the last few years, like with the Cambridge Analytica stuff about like data and about personal information and how that's bought and sold and used in this way, used in that way. And I think it really highlighted the power that social media can have in terms of influencing us as people, not just us using it as a thing to express ourselves and communicate ourselves, but as a thing that has a direct impact on our lives and the way we behave. And so, obviously, the 2016 US presidential election comes to mind in terms of like, was there interference, and did, to what extent did social media play in people changing their minds one way or another, whether it was through advertisements or whether it was through news articles being promoted more than others, and I think that's another example of where it's so multifaceted and there are so many things and bits and bats to it that it's almost impossible to come to any sort of conclusion. But we've all kind of got to live with the idea that we're using these platforms for the purposes we want, but we also all kind of know that it's also affecting us in a real life, actual way as well. Um, yeah.
So I think any public space is a good enough space to influence people, right? Like publishing a book or going to a public square and just saying what it is you have to say, or sitting around a table at a restaurant and having a conversation. Um, Public space in general is very effective at or a very effective tool to sway people's opinions one way or another, or to help form people's opinions. The problem with social media, so in other words, like when crowds gather and they share ideas, people will adopt those ideas at I don't know what the percentage rate is, but those ideas will be adopted based on the feelings that are created and the experiences that they have, not necessarily based on whether or not that idea is good or whether or not it's true or factual, right? And so social media is sort of like this new public space that what's scary about it and exhilarating about it is it's huge. You can, I mean, you can go to like Times Square in New York and you could influence hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, or at least expose them to an idea. But now we're talking about millions of people, and you're talking about doing it in ways that we're not familiar with historically. Like, this is a first. And so for me, it, I don't think that it needs to be necessarily called good or bad or moral or immoral. I think it needs to be studied and understood. And I think that it should become something that is taught more in schools, where even people are just exposed to the idea that, like, hey, this is social media, this is what it does to your brain, this is how it influences people, so that people are better prepared to be in that public space and recognize when they're potentially being manipulated or whatever. But having said that, like, any cause can get positive or negative attention on social media. So it can advance really, really, really bad ideas, but it could also advance like human rights and LGBTQ rights and race disparities, and it can get conversations started about like climate change. I mean, just things that are really important that we need to be discussing and that we need to get into the public sphere and into public attention. Social media does it like wildfire, right? It'll spread it
As well,
so much
that's so
faster.
judging those areas, and I agree with you, judging those areas as the important ones that we need to talk about.
From my
Yeah.
from my subjective
From my
opinion,
perspective, yeah.
FYI. Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to dismiss the other things as the bad ideas, but obviously the people promoting those think
Don't.
they're the good ideas, and it's one of those that I think there's links to something I'm saying, but like, how do you build a system where it's just good things? And I think it's
Or should
possible.
you build
Yeah,
a system where it's just
yeah.
good thing? Like, I
Can
don't
you?
know.
Can you build a system
Can
where
you?
it's
That's
only good
yeah.
things? So talking about the fact that bad ideas can come through and influence thousands of people, how good is social media actually regulating itself? Because we talked about the flat earth, and now the YouTube was largely responsible for being a proponent of that idea, giving it a platform. But now it always includes a disclaimer, and it lists the flat earth videos lower down in its algorithms than other things. It seems to have done a pretty good job at trying to self-correct that. How good is social media in general at self-correcting itself?
I don't know. Like, I don't have a really smart, sharp answer for that off the top of my head, because I've also seen it censor a lot of shit that really shouldn't have been censored in the first place. Like, whether it's just an innocent joke that it's somehow flagged as inappropriate, or whether it's a mutual friend of ours, but I won't name him because I don't have his permission, posted something about, it was a joke, but the whole point of the joke was that when you translate something from English to Spanish, it actually ends up reversing its meaning. Where like in English it's this and this, but in Spanish it's this and this, and it's opposite. And so the joke was in the translation, but somehow Facebook decided that that was offensive because it was like, oh, stupid Americans, right? But the joke wasn't, oh, the Americans are stupid. It's, oh, we look at that translation and we laugh because it's opposite. Not we laugh because you're an American or because you're stupid. We laugh because of the translation itself and how funny that is. But it came off as offensive because it was like, oh, you stupid Americans or you stupid English speakers. And if you read it in its context, you can't possibly get that out of it. Like, you understand what is trying to be said there.
And I
But
think it's an
because
issue of scale, because, like, there are billions of Facebook users, and I know we keep talking about Facebook, but I think it's a a major example that sort of typifies lots of other social medias. But I think you can build all the algorithms and bots and whatever else to try and deal with these stuff, and it'll do some good and it'll do some not good.
yeah.
But like, I think it by definition must be impossible to sufficiently police uh, a, a social network that has such a vast number of people on it in any sort of effective way. And people talk a lot about like how many thousands of pieces of child pornography are shared on Facebook every day, and how many pieces of this and that are shared on there, and yet those things are illegal and the police should do things, but then it's a private space on Facebook and people don't know about it and Facebook can't see it, like the scale issue is still a problem there. And I think people talk a lot about social media companies should have much more ownership of the negative sides of things, and about like sort of online bullying and all these other issues that I've mentioned. But I just don't know how you would do it in any way that across the board is effective.
Oh yeah, it's a monolith. Like, how do you even do that? I know that they have incredible algorithms, but yeah, you do
There
run
are
in
algorithms that, yeah, are run by computers, but were designed by humans. We
exactly.
make mistakes about everything. You know, it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and on that side of things, being, I mean, I'm an admin in Facebook across a number of Facebook groups under an umbrella organization, and me and the other admins have talked, at length about the fact that Facebook algorithms seem to be changing, and they seem to be pulling up stuff that, as Laura was saying with our mutual friend, they seem to be pulling up things that are perfectly innocent for no particular reason. And it's like it's stuff that you look at because you get, as an administrator for a group, you get a notification when Facebook's pulled something up from that group, and you're looking at what's being pulled up, and you literally sat there thinking, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea why this is being pulled up, because there's no offensive language, it's not insulting, it's not political. And
Oh, I have an example of that. I posted the other day. I posted like I almost dropped my phone in the toilet. And I said, thank the porcelain gods or whatever that I caught it, right? It was like flagged, and it didn't post immediately. It was like, this needs to be approved for like whether or not the content was appropriate. And I was like, well, what did it catch? Did it catch the word toilet? The word gods? Like what about it was
What
flagged?
anti-porcelain agenda is going on here?
Right. Like, what's wrong with me saying like, oh my God, I almost dropped my phone in the toilet. Right. So yeah, I don't know. I think what you're saying is spot on. Like, it's a beast, it's a giant, and it's new. Like when we think in terms of even just our technological history, let alone all of human history. Um, Social media is just the last few years, and it's grown to be this beast. And I would say, from a skeptical perspective, just to kind of sort of round out the conversation a little bit, like from my perspective, it's really impossible to determine whether it's good or bad, or whether we even need to determine if it's good or bad. Like what Gilliver said, it's here. What do we do about it now that it's here? How to regulate it, whether or not people have a right to have a voice, even if their voice is
Wrong.
violent or wrong, wrong according to who, whether it's a subjective wrong or whether it's a factual
I was
wrong.
saying that purposely flippantly.
Nice. But yeah, I mean, it's a beast. And so I don't know, I guess from my perspective, it's how can I use it as responsibly as possible, and how can I understand the best the impact it has on me as an individual? Am I being manipulated by certain posts? Am I taking on people's opinions without checking it because of who it's coming from, right? So from a skeptical perspective, I'm the most interested in how I use it and in how it uses me, which is why I'm on a social media break right now.
so on to finish off with it, we'll finish off with the idea that social media is a beast. And you've kind of just given yours, but if you can just kind of condense your final thoughts on social media, what you think about it, Laura, and then Richard, see where we go.
I think I pretty much said it, so I'll just pass it on to Richard at this point, because I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think with all of the things that we've talked about, I think social media is just a tool, and it's a tool that's used by people. And I think if you're thinking about Facebook's good or Twitter's bad or this is good and this is bad, actually none of it necessarily, I don't think, is good or bad. And I think it's just the people who are using it at that time, at that place, in this instant, in that comment, are good or bad, or neither, or neutral. And I think, me personally, obviously we're here as skeptics, but I'm a secular humanist, and I think that we should strive to work together to improve the lives of humans all around the world. And I think social media can be a really powerful way of doing that. it's also a very powerful way to go against that. But let's try and go in a positive direction.
Yeah, and to finish up, I think like with many things in life, it's self-regulation is very important. Social media is going to be bad if you go to bad places within social media. If you seek out bad things, you're going to find it. If you seek out good things and if you're in good communities, you're going to get
Skeptic Hangout official discussion group.
Yeah, which is very, very good community to be a part of. I highly recommend it. If you get those good communities, it can be an amazing thing in your life. And if you feel you've had too much, do what Laura's doing and take a break from it for a while. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Get yourself together, gather yourself, come back when you feel ready. If you feel ready, you're not obliged to use social media at the end of the day. And
right. And know what it is you want to get from it. Like, go in there with intention and know what it is that your point is. That way it doesn't take over your life.
So we brought it back round to a positive to end. So we will lost it.
I'll cut that piece. How's that sound?
Go on, carry on.
All right. So that brings us to a really great stopping point. So don't forget to use that social media to check us out. Don't forget to like us on social media, follow us on social media, and keep the conversation rolling. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. As always, we are Laura,
Richard,
and Richard, and this has been Skeptic Hangout. Until next time,
keep questioning,
interrogate your beliefs,
and stay skeptical.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye bye.